I want to welcome everyone to Black Pittsburgh Matters. Black Pittsburgh Matters is a series of virtual town hall meetings affirming a citywide agenda that Black Pittsburgh does indeed matter. Black Pittsburgh Matters mean that Black lives matter. We must protect the health and safety of Black people. It means that Black communities matters. We must rebuild Black communities. And it means that Black wealth matters. We must focus on increasing Black employment and entrepreneurship.
The Black community has been disproportionately affected by concurrent crises. First, the COVID-19 pandemic and its resulting economic crisis, and race relations and police community relations, which is a public health crisis. Normally, in times of crisis and great change, we'd be coming to you as the Black elected officials of Pittsburgh and having meetings across the city with our constituents, partners, and allies. Since we cannot do so safely in the current pandemic, we're now using this media and platform to come to you in the ways we can, to talk about what we're doing, discuss policy and legislation concerning Black Pittsburgh. These meetings will be available via Facebook, YouTube, and the city's cable channel. You can contact or ask questions via the Black Pittsburgh Matters Facebook page or email us at blackpthmatters@gmail.com. And you can comment right now through our live feed. Today's town hall meeting topic is Youth, Opportunity, and Technology in Black Pittsburgh.
Recently, this week actually, Councilman Burgess and I introduced a resolution declaring a state of emergency in Pittsburgh public schools and addressing the achievement gap. The achievement gap for African American students is dramatic and concerning and should be concerning for all. As an example, for English at the third grade level, only 38.5% of African American students were proficient compared to 75.7% of white students. In fifth grade English, it's only 31.4% of African American students compared to 74.2% for white students. In eighth grade English, it's 28.7% of African American students compared to 68.7% for white students. And for math, in third grade, 32.7% of African American students were proficient compared to 63.1% of white students. In fifth grade, 14.8% of African American students compared to 57.2% of white students. And in eighth grade, only 9.3% of African American students were proficient in math compared to 28.8% of white students.
Daniel, when I saw that last statistic that only 9% of African American kids in eighth grade were proficient in math, I started thinking about that. Now, I don't use algebra every day. I took calculus, but I don't use calculus every day. But to be honest with you, I use eighth grade math every day. I use it to go to the store, to go to McDonald's, to go to Giant Eagle. If you're not proficient in eighth grade math, you can't survive. You can't live a productive life. And I just, that number I think was particularly difficult for me. And our kids were already behind before the pandemic. These are before the pandemic numbers. Now, after a year of having no in-person instruction, I know these numbers, the next time they're tested, will be much worse.
To say the least, and that is indeed the challenge. So using myself as an example, because I am a Pittsburgh public school parent, my son, when we shut down, was in first grade. He lost some of his first grade learning. He's now in second grade. He is absolutely not receiving the level of education that he would be receiving if he were in school. And so now the challenge becomes he's going to move on. He's got straight A's this year, as he's very happy. But we absolutely know that he and many other children are not going to be adequately prepared to enter into third grade. So you add the fact that these children were already doing bad for previous years. You layer COVID on top of it. You layer the fact that now there's conversations about closing schools. You put all these sort of things together, it absolutely equals a state of emergency within our system. And I think one thing we also need to acknowledge is that this is not an attack on the Pittsburgh School Board, because we know they alone cannot solve this problem. We know that some of the children coming to school have truancy issues. We know that some of the children are coming from homes that are not the most academically supportive and are not receiving the necessary resources after school, or not necessarily continuing their learning during the summer season. And so I think what we have to have is a conversation where we bring everyone together. We have to bring social service organizations. We have to talk about how the city can be supportive, what can be done differently inside of our schools. What are the educational advocacy organizations that exist and how can they help? But we've really got to figure what is our wraparound services and how do we reimagine Pittsburgh Public Schools? And I'm curious what your response has been since we introduced a resolution. But for the most part, it's been parents reaching out to me saying, thank you. We need to have this conversation.
Other than that, of the 42 school districts in Allegheny County, only 2 are not back to some version of in-person learning. And we know that our kids, many of them, maybe up to 50% of African American kids, have not been logged in during the last 9 months. And so, at least for grades 1 through 6, I believe it's urgent that they get back to school. I think we can get them back safely. Every other school district, all private schools, all the charter schools, almost every other school has in-person instruction instead of, and so I'm a big believer that we need in-person instruction for grades 1 through 6. And I've gotten a lot of feedback. The thing I find interesting is that, you have these paraprofessionals in the hubs working with these kids, right? And making perhaps $15 an hour. The teachers are online teaching, they're making perhaps $50, $60 an hour. Why is it unsafe for the teachers to come back, yet it's safe for these paraprofessionals to be in these hubs? I don't understand the difference. But I think we have to talk about it. But my response has been overwhelmingly supportive of our initiative. Again, I don't have the answer, and there may be a real fine answer as to why the kids can't be back in school. But I think that plan, whatever the benchmarks have to be for the kids to come back, we have to clearly know what they are. My own nephews, they usually are with me once a week in a month, and they're, all 3 grade school level kids. And I know they have not been doing almost no instruction over the last 9 months. And so I think we all have to get on board, churches, community groups, nonprofits, the sports teams. All of us are going to have to design intensive academic stuff in order to get these kids grade level, or else they'll be doomed for the rest of their life. I think this especially is concerning because Pittsburgh has moved from the steel city to having an eds and meds boom. The tech sector is booming, and so it's important that our kids develop these skills so they can have access to jobs that will help them sustain themselves. Math proficiency is especially important because our kids need to have the basics. This evening, we are talking and chatting about youth opportunity and technology in Black Pittsburgh with experts who have backgrounds in running youth programs, particularly programs focused on Black youth. We are honored to be joined by Max Dennison, Digital Equity and Inclusion Manager for the city, who runs programming, teaching kids coding basics, Josiah Gilliman, my brother's keeper coordinator for the city of Pittsburgh, and Sabrina Saunders Mosby, President and CEO of Vibrant Pittsburgh, which seeks to increase workplace diversity in Pittsburgh. Welcome to this evening's town hall meeting.
Hey, thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us, Rev. Happy Wednesday.
Thank you all for being here. So why don't we start with our distinguished lady. I'm just curious, Sabrina, as you hear sort of some of the statistics that we spoke about, and in your role with Vibrant Pittsburgh, trying to fulfill a lot of those sort of tech jobs that we're talking about as you're looking to fulfill all those positions, do you have concerns, especially when you hear the high school numbers, do you have concerns about the pipeline that we have coming up through our educational system and the ability to actually match the jobs that you on a daily basis are looking to fulfill?
Thank you, Councilman Lavelle, Councilman Burgess. Thank you for inviting me to participate this evening, and I'm glad to join friends to have a conversation that's really, it's vitally important, and it's one that, in light of the pandemic, we've been having a bit more because the concerns are heightened. I am concerned. I think we're all concerned. The pandemic has set back learning for all students, but as you just clearly stated, especially for Black students. And when we think about the opportunities that are being presented in the workforce within our city, within our region, we've already known that there were barriers and challenges for our young people to access those opportunities, to be prepared for those roles, for those tech jobs. You mentioned the eds and the meds, and all of the things that I worked a number of years ago to try and provide access to young people. For back in 2010, I was just thinking about where we were then. I was preparing for the Graduate Pittsburgh Summit when I was working in the mayor's office at that time, because the dropout rate was so significant at that point in time. We were saying that I think it was just every few seconds, every 9 seconds, I think it was, a student was dropping out of school. And so when we think about how the pandemic has forced our young people into remote learning, to be even more disconnected from the learning environment and from resources and access, we definitely need to pull our resources together. As you mentioned, this is not something that is just for the district to handle. We need to support them. We need to make sure that whether it's government, our business community, of course, our community members need to rally together to support our kids, because our region will not continue to thrive if we do not have young people, and particularly young people of color, Black students who are doing well academically, so that they can access the jobs of the future, the jobs of today.
Sorry, talk a little bit about, is there enough extra programming, out of school time programming? Now, you know a lot about all of the available resources for young people going on in the city. Is there enough, or do we need to expand, do you think, the programs that we're running?
Is there enough? First of all, I want to express gratitude as well for the opportunity to engage with you all, council people. Thank you so much. Reverend Burgess, I think it's the right question to ask. I think it makes sense to start with a rigorous assessment of the current landscape. And we're very blessed in this region in a number of ways, as you all well know. We have dozens of regional universities. We have an enormous foundation community that's very involved and influential. We have thousands, literally thousands of community-based organizations, and we have a relatively well-connected and active local government. That's a recipe for a lot of great things, and yet we know that there have been persistent opportunity and achievement gaps that have faced communities of color, Black communities, African-American communities, for far too long. Before COVID, this was a topic of conversation. It's what informed the creation of the My Brother's Keeper initiative, and also Mayor Peduto and County Executive Fitzgerald accepting the challenge, this acknowledgement that there has to be better available to us, and we'll start with what's working, but we need to harmonize upwards quickly because the stakes are simply too high. When you look at the impact on families, on communities, both in real time and over time, the realities of generational poverty of different kinds, the time is now to not only have this discussion and to move things forward. And then in the midst of all of this activity, in the midst of all of this network weaving, a global pandemic and the state of the world changes in clear and practical ways. And as you so well articulated at the beginning, there are enormous challenges that are being faced by our communities and our families and our neighbors every day. And it makes all the sense in the world to be extremely concerned, especially about the cognitive, social, emotional, and mental development of our young people, not because their capacity is an issue, but because this is an unforeseen and unprecedented circumstance for all of us that are living currently in Pittsburgh. And I look forward to this discussion to talk about more ways to bring resources to bear, but I think also to engage in conversation around this with our young people, with the leaders and the adults in their lives that are loving and caring for them, and with elected officials and leaders from different sectors. But we got to get to work, and I remain optimistic because I think that we're living in a season of incredible opportunity, but there are also barriers, and there are also forces, elements in the universe like a pandemic that have arisen that we need to address and understand as well. So do we need more? Perhaps. Do we need better? Absolutely. And I hope that what COVID-19 has done is give us a chance to get very practical about the current state of things. We know that it's not anyone's individual fault that COVID happened. It's not any system's individual fault, but we all have what I would argue is a compelling interest in the lives, the livelihoods, the lived experiences of our neighbors in general, and of those that have been most marginalized and left behind. And as far as My Brother's Keeper is concerned and the work of the Office of Equity, I know I've worked with you, council people, so closely. Max is someone I've worked with very closely at the city, and to bring out so many conversations in different sectors. My Brother's Keeper starts with an initial strong focus on Black men and boys. That's the initial race and gender lens of the initiative. And the time has come to talk about what those lives are like, how they can get better, and understanding the reality of intersectionality, how these gender and race lenses show up in each other's lives and through systems will let us understand what solutions look like. But it's going to take everybody bringing their best. There's not one level of government, one philanthropic entity, one community-based organization that can be all things to all people. We need many voices lifted in song. And so I really appreciate this kind of conversation, because this is how we'll get it done.
So Max, you are the Digital Equity and Inclusion Officer for the city. One of the things we quickly discovered, we knew in many respects, but also discovered, was the digital divide is very real. We discovered it with the COVID and so many children not being able to get online with their work, which also is so important in terms of Rec to Tech. Can you talk to us a little bit about your work and how we as a city are looking to deal with digital equity and inclusion?
Sure, and like my colleagues, I want to thank you guys for allowing me to jump on the platform and speak about it. My role as the digital inclusion coordinator is to address the digital divide directly. The problems we're seeing with COVID are problems that have already been there. Like you said, a lot of students had problems with the computer, but the problem also came when their parents couldn't help them with the same work that they were beginning. Some parents don't have basic digital skills, and the problem was exacerbated by COVID. So my goal is with Rec to Tech is to make tech normal in the community, to make it a normal thing that have taken a coding class, an artificial intelligence class, a machine learning class. And I think that's part of the issue, is that, we talk about athletics, we talk about sports, academics, but you really don't hear the conversation about tech. Yet tech is going to change every single one of our lives it's already changed our lives, right? Thinking about, look at how we're communicating today versus, I just think 10 years ago in high school, I could have never thought of the ways we communicate via iPhone, Androids. So the conversation of tech really has to become a norm. And what we would like to do is, right now we have 10 recreation centers in the city of Pittsburgh. They're traditionally used for athletics, lifting weights, after school programs. You can come play video games. It's like a hub for young teenagers to come after school and frequent their friends. But we want to turn these 10 recreation centers into tech spaces. So we want to normalize the idea that when you come to after school, you don't just have to play basketball. And what I like to when I'm talking to the director, Chapman, I always say, everybody can't play basketball anyway. Some people are just sitting there waiting to get on the court, and they can't play ball anyway. Maybe they could come downstairs and learn how to create a website, learn how to create an application, learn how to harness other skills that they may have going on. And I'm really excited about some of the things we got coming. We've been on calls before, Councilman Lavelle. We're working with Ammons, and we want to start there with some of the programming that's already been developed there. But that's really the goal of Rec to Tech, to make it normal, to make it a regular conversation for kids to go home and say, hey, I went to the rec center. Hey, did you play ball? No, we didn't play ball today. Today, we built an application. We built a website around sports, and to really just normalize the conversation. It doesn't happen as much as it needs to happen. And what's interesting is, I think Councilman Burgess has brought up, so many tech companies are moving to Pittsburgh. So many companies are here now. And I had a conversation maybe 2 years ago, and I said, there's no reason if you live in Homewood that you should know that 2 blocks away Google is there. That connection, you can literally, if you lived in certain streets in Homewood, walk to Google. And we got to do better with the communication. And we're hoping that the recreation center can be a medium where both the companies who may not feel comfortable coming to the community and the community who may not feel comfortable coming. You know, if I'm a young kid, I'm a Hill District native, you know, I couldn't see myself at 13 or 14-year-old walking into CMU and saying, hey, I want to be a computer scientist. So we're hoping that we can use the rec centers maybe as a medium where we can bring in universities, bring in the kids, and start to have conversations, and it can be some intersectionality between the two that is not really happening. But that's basically the agenda of Rec to Tech. We want to make it a regular thing for your kids to come home and say, I coded. I learned a little bit about artificial intelligence today. The teachers there are diverse. We really want to spread it out, and you know, I'm excited.
Sabrina, you've worked a long time in youth engagement and developmental programming. You work for the city, you work for the Urban League, you've done a little bit of that. You've worked with programs overseeing women's programming and girls programming. So what advice would you give to Black youth looking to get involved in the tech sector, and or how do they begin their professional careers in you know, whether it's entry-level jobs or internships? You know, you've done this work for a long time. So what's your message to Black youth and to their parents, frankly, and what should they be doing if they want to get a professional job and, you know, take care of their families?
Sure. So I think when we're talking about Black youth, from my perspective right now, I'm talking about school age youth. And so since we know a little bit about technology and social media, I'm probably talking to their parents right now. They're watching their grandparents who we know that those with school age children are more frequently going to be on Facebook. So what I would say is that there are actually a number of programs that are available to get young people engaged in exploring technology, exploring their interest in technology. I think that's where it needs to start. Don't be confused by you know, the fact that the academic side of the challenges that we face are prevalent. The interest in technology is very real for young people, right? And young people are the biggest consumers of tech and media. And so what I would say is encourage them to follow the things that they're interested in. I mean, how many young influencers do we see on the internet? Creators, young people that are playing and gaming that could be creating games. And there are young people that are doing it. And so the easiest way, and I think the most impactful way to get young people engaged in the concept of technology as a career is to encourage them to stay connected to the things they already are enjoying, and recognizing that they can transition that into not just a viable career, but additional learning, and can make an impact for their family and their communities as well, by finding solutions to challenges and problems, because that's all the tech is, right? And they're doing that without probably even thinking about it. I think that we should flip the concept on its head of just being consumers of the things and the resources that are around us. They should be creating, developing, and really for creating a vision for what technology looks like, because they're probably much more connected and well-versed in what's needed to improve our technology than most of us are, I should say. They just don't know it yet.
Do you mind if I jump in there and build on what Sabrina is saying? It's such a valuable point, and I know that, and President Sabrina can tell you, you know, this conversation is happening at all kinds of different levels with companies and leaders of all sorts that are trying to figure this out. This idea of reacting to the current state of the world is so valuable. Technology and the internet specifically has changed so much, and the reality is that our young people, school-age kids, by and large, are connected to technology in ways that might be surprising. And I think it's just such a good window in to opportunities on how to engage with young people. What Sabrina is saying, meeting them where they're at along what they're already interested in. And you can do that in the learning sense. You can also do it just in like the educational sense, but also in just the general learning sense. You know, the ability to say that you seem interested in this part of technology, in gaming, or in apps, or whatever the case may be. And you can use these platforms to engage with creators in that space, to learn from them. Maybe there's a TED Talk. They may have a YouTube channel. There might be a course that you can sign up for, ebooks that you can read on this of the subject matter. That interest from the young person is the greatest place to start. And when I am talking with organizations, nonprofits, increasingly businesses that are really trying to figure this out, philanthropic folks, as well as on a conversation with people in the foundation community, they're trying to figure out what's going on with kids and how they can engage. For me, it's always to start where they are. And I think that gaming and esports in general, it presents a huge opportunity to us, because a lot of young people, I had a chance to engage with a group of young folks from Clariton through a partnership with the Steelers at the end of last year. They all have had varying degrees of success and enjoyment with virtual learning. Some of it's gone really well, some of it not so much. Eventually they were able to get tablets and technology, not all of them did at first. There's issues with broadband and connection. At the end of the meeting, I asked them if they gamed. They all gamed. They all play video games, different kinds, and they're passionate about it. They wanted to tell me which was the best Spider-Man game out currently and who's best at 2K and stuff like that. Now, I'm not trying to paint with a broad brush. Our young people are as individual as they are brilliant, but I think there are, as we start to honor where they're at, we're going to find ways to collaborate that attracts their attention in an organic sense. If they're already playing video games, let's play some video games, you know? And anyways, that's just by way of example, but Sabrina is right on, you know, with that. And I hope more leaders take that point of view.
And companies are supporting these programs and initiatives financially. I know that the programs still exist at the Urban League that were under the Department of Education when I was leading it. They have an entire TechU suite of offerings for techno teens and digital connectors that's sponsored by Comcast, right? There are great opportunities for an entry point into these really complex, I think, spaces that young people are already into. We just need to support it. And I think no longer are should parents be telling their young people to stop gaming at this point. Obviously, they should be doing other things, but there's money to be made in this, right? This is a space of opportunity and wealth building.
Yeah, real quick, Reverend, when I worked I think when I first met you, I was working at the Home of Children's Village, you know, a nonprofit you're very familiar with. I know other folks on the line are familiar with. I had a chance to work with some Learn and Earn students, like over the summer. I would work with them on projects for the 16 weeks and all of that, and a lot of meaningful time. Some of these kids are good at gaming, Rev. Even back then, I had one young man in particular, a young man named Nicholas. He'd already won over $1,000 playing Call of Duty because he was that good. He was participating in events and in tournaments, and he was winning money. It was a big thing for the family. Now, it's not to say that everyone needs the game and start making money via gaming, but there are more opportunities to make money or to join a team than it may appear at first.
I do want to emphasize about the summer, since you mentioned the summer youth earn and learn program from the city. It's one of perhaps our best kept secrets, if it's secret, that we, along with the leadership of Mayor Peduto and council, we made sure that every single young person who applied to the program and was eligible received a job, every single one over the last several years. And so we quadrupled the funding stream, and we made a real commitment over the Peduto administration. One of the things we're most proud of is our partnership with him in ensuring that every single young person, and the reason I'm passionate about it, because I was that young person, right? I worked for Park and Recreations. I was an intern at Mellon Park for 3 years during my college time, and that helped pay for my tennis shoes and my books going to college. And so I think every young person should have the opportunity to work and have a sense of self proficiency. And I just think it's really important. I'm a big fan of the program. Max, talk a little bit about what tech, for those of us, maybe like me, I know a little bit about what technology means, but talk a little bit about all the ways in which people can engage in the technology sector.
Wow, that's a big question. There's so many, and even myself, with the experience I have with programming, I'm still learning because it's a constant changing of. There's new languages. There's just so many directions you can go. Two things I want to say real quick, just to touch on what you said about learn and learn. I think sometimes we underestimate how much students want to make money as a part of whatever they're trying to do. So I really do enjoy what Learn and Learners have been able to do, and been able to help youth, because there's so many kids that come to me and say, hey, they have to make a choice between making money and learning. So when you kind of connect the two and you can say, hey, you're going to learn a skill set, and you also can get paid for it, I think that's great. And fast forward back to what you were saying, I think the biggest thing that I tell people is think about what you want to put out into the world. I've had a lot of experiences since I've joined tech. I've got to actually talk to billionaires that were younger than me, that created something because they wanted to see something in the world. I had the opportunity to talk with the creator of, I can't think of this. It's slipping my mind. I'm sorry. Zach Dorsey. I'm sorry, I forgot his name for a second, and he's like worth $3 billion. But I got to talk to Zach Dorsey, and he was, at the time, he was like 23 or 24. I couldn't fathom the thought of somebody so young having so much control and so much power and opportunity to provide jobs and opportunities for so many people at such a young age. And it's like he really harnessed the power of technology. So when I'm talking to students and I'm talking to kids, I usually tell them, what do you want to see in the world? What do you want to put out there? What do you want to create? How do you see technology helping your day-to-day life, whether it's an application, whether it's a job? And then I kind of work deductively that way. It's easier to see what you want in the world versus, because tech is so big. You could be in a video gaming. You could be there. You could want to make robots. There's just so many directions. So I usually say, tap into what you're interested in, and then what do you want to project out into the world? I myself, I'm working on an application. I won't necessarily speak to it on camera right now, but it's something that I think is needed and can be useful in the world. And I think if you think like that, then you're going to see the opportunities are going to present themselves to you, and the direction that you want to go will also present themselves to you. And I just want to touch on one thing with the video gaming and the opportunities to build. I absolutely agree. Video gaming is huge. I don't know whether it's $1 billion or $1 trillion now. I think we do need to have a conversation with our youth about being a user versus being a creator. That's a huge conversation. I don't know. Our kids can do whatever you put in front of them on an iPhone, an Android, or any technology. But I don't know. And what I'm learning working with the youth is that they don't necessarily look at themselves as manufacturers or builders or creators, but just users. And in the future, the power will be with the people who create the platforms, the people who create the Googles. If you think about it now, we all use a platform. We're using Facebook. We're using Zoom. We're using anything you could think of, Amazon. These are all platforms created. So I really try to empower the kids to know that not only can you be a user of these platforms, which we all are, but really try to adjust and pivot your mind to think as a creator and a builder and an architect, in a sense, of what you want to see out here.
Can I just support what Max is saying just quickly? I think what Max and Josiah and I have said about young people needing to be a part of the tech they use and follow their passions is really important. And that's what parents and friends and those that are encouraging young people, educating them and supporting them should be pushing them to do. But I also want to remind us, we started kind of with a baseline of the importance of tech and talking about the digital divide. And I think that's also a piece that we should focus on, because 70% of the new jobs that we're going to see across the state of Pennsylvania will require the proficiency of a computer. That's something that's really, really important for young people of color. But in order to really advance in your career, you need to have digital skills. And one of the programs that I was really excited to hear about, I think right at the height of, right when we first entered into the pandemic last year, was Level Up 412. And I'm not sure if you're familiar with it, but it's that of Neighborhood Allies. And so I know that they are working to provide free access to technology equipment for young people and adults, and free courses to help to eliminate the digital divide that exists, that has considerably grown during the pandemic. And so that's another resource for opportunity around learning for our young people and for their parents.
So towards that point, Sabrina, because I recently, maybe about 2 weeks ago, actually just discovered Level Up 412. I always viewed it as something that was geared more towards young professionals, but I discovered that they also have programming opportunities for young children. So I actually started looking into what my children could learn and do. But this is for everyone. I'm just curious because you talk about meeting the kids where they're at and getting them engaged. For the parents like myself who are trying to figure out how to better get them engaged, especially during COVID, when we can't necessarily go out into the world. Like pre-COVID, my children were members of Sarah Hines House. And so my daughter actually took a one coding class there, where the equivalent of what she did was, I would say, create like a little version of Pac-Man from back in the Atari days. But even that was cool to me because I don't know how to do it. But if all of you could share some resources that you know of, where parents who are trying to advance their children and have them learn coding and programming, that are watching, something that they can take away from this conversation and say, okay, I can look into that, similar to Level Up 412, because I just discovered it 2 weeks ago.
So I'll go, and then I'll pass it off to Max and Josiah. But I do want to mention that I know a lot of programs are trying to figure out how to still engage with young people. And so do not count them out. There is, in addition to the digital divide that exists for young people, there is a gender divide. And as the only woman on the panel, I want to make sure that I mention that our young women are also being pushed out of the equation significantly for a number of reasons. And we've seen some strides, but it's significant for young people, for young Black women, excuse me. And so there are national programs that are offering things online that young people can tap into, that they can plug into. So organizations like Black Girls Code, and then locally Girls of Steel Robotics. So looking to diversify in that particular space. We at Vibrant have a number of corporate partners that are offering opportunities for dollars, scholarships like Carnegie Robotics and Kennametal, the Trib Total Live is offering a scholarship in media, and Amatech will be offering a scholarship for young people with racial and ethnic diversity in their background to apply for. So parents should be looking out for those things too, because supporting them financially in their academics is going to be important, because college is expensive. So those are also resources that we should be pushing out. So how to continue your education in this particular space and pay for it. There's some corporations supporting it, but there are also national organizations that are trying to push out content to help parents continue to keep their young people engaged.
So I have a few resources that I actually wrote down. So I'll start with shameless plug here. Start with what we're doing at the city though. Rec the Tech. Please check out the Parks and Recreation website. We will be blessing out cohorts of programming throughout the year. We have a clubhouse where kids can stop in, whether they have, they've been coding for years or they're a beginner. Once a month, we will have just a short lesson where they can just kind of log in, learn, and then kind of go. It's the way I kind of envision it is an open gym. If you just want to come in, stop in, take a couple shots, or in this do a little code, you'll be able to do that. Beta Builders, which is something before I got to the city, I co-founded with a friend of mine, Anthony Harper, It's still running. You can learn how to code every weekend. The website is betabuilders.org. Some of the other organizations and companies that I support around the city, Sabrina actually brought up Level 412, tremendous resource. You can go to their website. There's a ton of different programming from video gaming to coding to website building. And I don't just promote these programs just because I actually sign my children up for them as well, so that they can go and learn. And they've been incredible resources. Sabrina also said Black Girls Code. And the male version of that is All-Star Code. So there's All-Star Code for young Black males and Black Girls Code for African American or minority females. I want to make sure I'm not missing anything. There's the Citizens Lab, Empower House by Terry Smith. These are people in the city doing incredible work that we got to continue to champion these things, because we're in an athletic city. We love sports, but again, this needs to be the household conversation. Tech and the future of tech really needs to become, we need to talk about that the same way we talk about the Steelers, in my personal opinion. And before I pass it over to Josiah, I would say my daughter joined a program that was at, I believe, Urban Academy called Seek. It's just a summer program, but it's STEM-based. You work in groups, you do all type of scientific things, and then they have like a competition, and they have to present their whatever they worked on during those few weeks. Those are the resources I could think offhand. And then lastly, I would say follow Latrinda. Latrinda Sherrill, CS Pittsburgh for All, Remake Learning. If there's anything going on in STEM, even myself, I will contact Latrinda. She knows somebody or knows somebody in that group. So you can either follow her on Facebook but just get close to her. I'm sure you will find some resources about STEM. She's always posting about STEM. So for the parents, follow her or go to her page at Remake Learning.
Yeah, she's also great on Twitter, and she's the person that recommended me for Clubhouse. She's a tremendous asset in a lot of ways. Great programs and resources already mentioned. Another organization that comes to mind is the Lighthouse Project at the Homewood YMCA. I encourage folks, if they're interested in digital media, but music specifically, to give them a look. And maybe in the programmatic sense, a young person gets involved with them, but also to learn about a really cool kind of organization. And one of these partnerships, I'm talking about the YMCA, local foundations, community-based organizations, all making it work. It's really tremendous. Some gaming resources, since we've talked about it a little bit. If you're looking to build literacy, problem-solving skills, and just kind of encourage general exploration, then I think it makes sense to play games like that. A little bit about me. I was homeschooled for several years, and my family gamed a lot, and it was cool because everyone could do something. We used to play like Oregon Trail games and stuff like that, and it required that one of us was navigating, one of us was figuring out a solution, and one of us had an almanac looking up something to figure out a riddle or something like that. And we learned so much organically just by having fun. One of those games that you can still play online is a brand called Carmen Sandiego. There's a version of this game that we used to play back in the day, like in PC and stuff, but I believe it's connected to Google Earth. So you'll explore the world in a lot of ways, trying to find this protagonist, Carmen Sandiego, and you solve clues to figure out what city she's gone to next, and it's a lot of fun. In terms of gaming, like different platforms, there's a lot of really interesting learning experiences on Minecraft, especially for some of our parents and young people that have younger kids. I mean, look, there are adults playing Minecraft. I have seen entire cities from Lord of the Rings built with Minecraft blocks. It gets very sophisticated and nuanced, but there's a lot of very interesting learning experiences for young people that are very approachable, and that where you can scaffold up into more sophisticated kinds of games and problem solving. And then on a platform called the Nintendo Switch, Animal Crossing, another game that I've heard about more and more that young people, even into college age, are absolutely loving. And you learn like basic principles of like order and agriculture, and there's like a mini economy in the game, and you can build and trade assets and things along those lines. And whether or not you have the Switch or whatnot, I'd encourage people to YouTube it even to see some of the gameplay, because the idea of the game, I think, is valuable. The idea of this kind of engagement is valuable. It reminds me of when I was more in high school, a little bit later on, playing things like SimCity, where you're placing different kinds of skyscrapers and power plants and farms on a field, and you're anticipating changes in the environment, and things come up that you didn't foresee, and you have to redevelop things because a tornado killed your development and stuff like that. They're games, and they're fun and they're approachable, but you're learning real skills. And I was on a talk recently where they were talking about some of these larger businesses, PricewaterhouseCoopers and these other huge, this is more President Sabrina's world than mine, as you probably can tell. But they were talking about changing their inboarding or their onboarding processes or their interviewing process to test less for test taking skills and more for fluid intelligence. Including these game-based assessments where people, they judge your problem-solving capacity. And they're finding that it's leading to greater equitable decision-making, and they're finding better talent because they're engaging with different parts of the brain than just, how you take a test, which we know can be improved if you have the resources to take, some kind of accredited course to learn how to take the test better. So I think there's a lot of relevance across sector for this kind of idea, and those titles are a good place to start for folks to learn more.
I want to share an experience I had, and then ask you a question off of it. When I was a young man, first starting off in ministry, I tried to be the expert of everything. I wanted to be the best preacher, the best teacher, the best counselor, the best administrator, all that stuff. And I had an older preacher, mentor of mine, and he said something I will never forget. He said, do you know the most important thing you ever do? And I'm thinking, well, prepare a sermon. He said, no. I mentioned all these things. He said, no. I said, well, what is it? He said, the most important thing you will ever do is there will be some little kid in the back of your church that you think is not paying you any attention, who's crawling through the pews and wiggling, and you will say something to that young person to encourage them, to let them know that they can be successful in life. And that may be the most important thing that you ever do. Now, coming toward the end of my career, I have found that to be absolutely true, that the most important things I have ever done were none of the technical things or the programmatic things that I sometimes am proud of. It's been those sort of encouragements. I believe very much that you don't let other people name your reality or make your reality, that you can do anything you want. My question then is, and this is really for young people who may be listening or their parents, was there some mentor or moment in your life, your own pathway, that sparked something in you that helped you to become the successful contributing people that you are today?
Yeah, I absolutely. So let me start with, I would definitely say my father, being in just in the Hill District, being able to manage a huge family, which was normal at that time, I guess. It's not so much now. But I would say professionally, it's weird because I'm in tech, but these individuals definitely shaped me by just watching them. And I got a funny story, Councilman Burgess, that includes you. So I'll say a mentor of mine is Elliot Housey, Judge Housey now, Orny Bay, who's also Duquesne graduate and lawyer, who transitioned from law into tech. And sometimes it's not so much what people say, it's just watching how they move and watching the steps that they take and their ability to transition. That's why I always say exposure is very useful. Being able to connect with the person who's speaking and that they look like you and sound like you and come from communities and neighborhoods that you come from, it does, I believe, make students or kids believe that, things are possible. And then the story that I had with you, I actually took your class at CCAC Homewood, and again, this is why it's important to see confident African-American men or whatever ethnicity or gender you are. You need to see yourself in those people. But I still remember we had a speaking class and you came in with so much confidence. I would border on the line, like, I was like, wow, he's so, it was like you knew you were confident about the work, and sometimes you don't think those things matter. But I think for like maybe the next year or two, if I had to go to a speaking engagement, I would say I would my Professor Burgess walk into a room and just have that level of, I'm going to control this room regardless of what the conversation is about. And I still think about that. So for me, it's very important for our children to connect to tech, to see people that look like them, sound like them, possibly even wear the same tennis shoes or listen to the same music, and to exude that type of confidence and feel like you can be a part of this. This is something you can do. This is something that you can capture. You never really know, like you said, who you're influencing, but sometimes just being yourself.
This is a hard one for me because I've had so many mentors in my life that I just admire and that I appreciate, and I talk about it all the time. I'm invited to speak all over the place to talk about this experience. And Rev, you know that you are one of them, and I could go on for days talking about the ways that you have poured into me and the seeds that you planted in my life. So we all know that effective mentoring relationships can certainly make the difference in a person's personal and professional development. And so I'll say that I've been blessed to benefit from strong and successful mentorship relationships. But it's really been, as I think about where I am today, champions and sponsors that have contributed to my professional success. And so I have one that's a woman, and I want to specifically say a woman because I've had many mentors that have been men. And so Esther Bush is who I will say. And I like naming people. So if you're watching, let her know that I named her again. So Esther has been a great mentor of mine. She was my CEO at the Urban League, of course. She always pointed out women in leadership positions and leadership roles and non-traditional jobs and fields. And she challenged me to think about how I would address some of the challenges that they faced. And so she would say to me things like, when you're CEO, you don't want this to be your problem to fix. So let's get to it. So it's not that the expectation was that I would be CEO at some point in time. She just reminded me that it was an option. The funny thing is she told me that I would be a CEO before I even thought that it was possible. And those are the types of things, those are the types of seeds and whatnot that need to be planted in our young people. It certainly made a difference for me.
Josiah?
All right, well, I guess I can't dodge this question, huh? Look, I'll start by saying I've been inspired by everyone on this call, and just to emphasize the point that Sabrina's making about how you can get messages and encouragement from all kinds of different sources. And if you're paying attention, and if I was speaking directly to young people, if you're paying attention, you'll find that life sends you messages for your benefit, to increase your wisdom and to move you along. Max is someone that's inspires me by his passion and the way that he's looked at himself as an ever-evolving skill set and someone that wants to make opportunities available for more people. I remember going to a rec center with Max and engaging directly with young people about what they were up to and what they were interested in, and the rapport that he had with them was something that impresses me to this day. President Sabrina, which is very easy for me to say because it just fits with my concept of her, is a personal hero of mine, someone that I've seen move from position to position, increase in influence, and always point to leaders that came before in a way that I'm inspired about. And I would encourage people to look at what Vibrant is doing with companies and on behalf of this region, because it's very exciting work. Let me put it to you this way: Vibrant Pittsburgh, reaching its best and highest use with Sabrina's leadership and the board and the team that they have, is a very good thing for this region. And we're lucky to have her there. Councilman Lavelle, besides showing me what it looks like to grow up and dress sensibly, I remember being at the Home of Children's Village and attending affordable housing task force meetings, sir. and talking about this idea of setting up a trust fund, a land bank, and these things that I'd never conceived of before, and realized that if you collaborate here in Pittsburgh and in the region, you can do things that have never been accomplished before and set an example for other communities. And Reverend Burgess, one of my clear memories of you from the beginning was in the very beginning of the Pittsburgh Black Elected Officials Coalition. You guys had engaged the village to be community facilitators, and I pay attention. I'm a pastor's kid. I'm getting to that point in a second. I'm a pastor's kid and a pastor's grandkid, and I pay attention to how folks move around the room, and to see you show up as someone who's been, I feel sometimes people should Google you a bit and learn about how long you've been involved with local politics. To see someone with your tenure, so to speak, moving tables and chairs, just that servant leadership, saying hello to folks, and then closing us out in prayer at the end of these meetings where folks have shared a lot of personal stuff, Reverend, a lot of pain and things they've gone through, just to spend that moment of community, something that's inspired me. It feels very, very comfortable. Look, so my dad's a pastor. My grandfather was a pastor, and his name was James Timothy Gilliam. And my dad's name is Drell Timothy Gilliam. And so he wanted to name me as his oldest son something so that we would have the same initials, JTG. And they chose for my name, Josiah Timothy Gilliam. Why am I mentioning this? It's going back to your original question, Reverend, about something that's inspired me. I was raised with a scripture that said that death and life are in the power of the tongue. And I think that's real. And I think if you look it up neurologically, neuroscience wise, you'll find that to be the case. The way that people think and speak about themselves matters. It matters to your brain. It matters to your mental health. So my parents decided to name me Josiah Timothy, and both of those names refer to young people in the Bible. I'm not trying to preach here or ask anyone to adopt a religious premise. I'm talking archetypically, if you'll indulge me. Josiah is let me start with Timothy. Timothy was a young man that served one of the original apostles, a guy by the name of Paul. And there are some letters in the New Testament. It's like the second part of the Christian Bible that are to Timothy specifically. And in one of those letters, there's this encouragement from this elder to this young person to not let anyone look down on him because he's young, but instead for him to set an example in speech and in conduct and in love and in faith and all of these things. And so my dad would talk with me about why they chose the name Timothy, because they wanted me to remember that. Not to think that I'm better than anyone else, but not to accept treatment of people looking down on me either, and to take responsibility myself to be the kind of example in the world that I would like to see, from a point of humility, but from a point of capacity too. And then my first name, Josiah, was also a young leader. Josiah was someone that came after some bad kings, Reverend, as you well know. They weren't great. I said on the spectrum from like David, there's another end of that spectrum, and some of those guys on the spectrum came right before Josiah. And as it turned out, Josiah's father was taken out of the scenario, and he becomes king when he was 8 years old. And the story from there is about a community conversation, because Josiah is too young to be king, but there was a system of regents of elders. It speaks to me about society valuing young talent, surrounding them with wisdom and support to help them achieve their destiny. A little bit later down the line, in the midst of cleaning things and putting things in order, Josiah's administration rediscovers the law of the land and call everybody together to talk about how they got to where they were, what the state of the world was, and what had taken place. Because the scriptures, as you well know, especially at that point, was a story about a family. It was a story about a people and what God had done for them. So they all came together, they talked about it, and they said that they would commit themselves to each other and to that present moment. And they experienced a renaissance. For the rest of Josiah's life, they experienced a renaissance. They set all of these ills, they redress all of these wrongs. There's incredible peace and prosperity, and it's this wonderful moment. And I would close with that because I think that's what's available to us today. We have incredible things going for us. We have some of the best businesses, the most innovative universities, innovative companies. We have all of these nonprofits. We have all these foundations. We've got elected officials that understand and that are saying the right things and that are pushing us forward in terms of language. We can have a Josiah moment, so to speak, if we talk about these opportunity and achievement gaps in terms of solution-oriented thinking. If we commit ourselves to each other and to this moment, we can not just have a renaissance, we can set up another era. We can go past the legacy of Josiah, where that promise died, with him, and judgment came after he was gone. We can set a different standard and set a different story. We can leave a better Pittsburgh for our young people that are living now and that are coming than we found it, and we can continue the story of this place, which is that things get better over time, even in the midst of extraordinary challenges. The last time there was a global pandemic, I don't need to educate anyone here on this call, but we did not have these UPMCs and these high marks and these AHNs. And in fact, healthcare was a real concern in the region. So I look around, I see another global pandemic, and I see a region that's ready to respond and to take it seriously and to work with each other to keep each other safe in a way that you could have only dreamed of. People living in the early 1900s wouldn't understand what I was saying to them about what we have working for us. So I believe in another 100 years, things can be even better, even better. But that's what I would say to young people. Don't let people look down on you because you're young. You yourself are an example. And believe in the story of Josiah. Believe that there are elders. There are people that are working on your behalf. There are forces aligning for you, for your benefit. There are people that care about you and believe in you, that believe in your capacity and your potential, and want to see it realized that you can choose to live however you want to live, be whoever you want to be. And remember that death and life is in the power of the tongue. Be careful how you speak about yourself. Be careful how you speak about your peers, about your parents and your elders, because karma is practical to a certain extent. You will experience the consequences of how you think and how you speak. So I appreciate the question, Reverend. That's how I respond.
Thank you very much.
So I don't think anything else needs said at this point. I think we can end on such a wonderful, not sermon, although I think he's working towards that one day. But I definitely think it was a tremendous message. And so I thank you for that message. And I also want to thank all of our guests who joined us this evening for participating in our show. And I specifically want to thank Mr. Gilliam and Sabrina Saunders, and just thank you all, as well as Max Dennison, who is our Digital Equity Inclusion Manager. I should give all your titles, I apologize. Josiah Gilliam, my brother's keeper coordinator for the city of Pittsburgh, and obviously the wonderful Sabrina Saunders Mosby, President and CEO of Vibrant Pittsburgh. And I thank you all for your words. I think many young people will be encouraged. I will be encouraging parents who are interested in getting their kids more into tech, more into coding, more into gaming to view this so they can take away the resources that you all have provided. And this will obviously be helpful towards rebuilding our communities and rebuilding our communities for Black people, by Black people, with our partners and allies such as yourself. So thank you all.
I want to thank all of you for watching and participating in this town hall meeting. Remember, you can watch this show on Facebook, the city's YouTube channel, or the city's cable channel. A new meeting will occur every Wednesday. By working together, united in purpose, we can transform our city, strengthen it for all of its residents. Pittsburgh is becoming a city for all by becoming a city where Black Pittsburgh matters. Stay safe, good evening, and be blessed.
Bye.